The $32 Idiot. Flannery's often pointed out to me that I don't know a bloomin' thing, and she's right. I can recognize nettles, corn, and pine trees. Anything else is a plant, a weed, or a tree. Plants grow, weeds you mow or pull, and trees are what you sit under and drink your beer after you're done. More than that, I don't know and never bothered to learn. As a kid, we always had a large garden, and as adults don't always want rambunctious kids underfoot during the summer months, it often fell to me to do the weeding. This is a chore I hated. Crawling around in the dirt under the hot summer sun, yanking weeds so that vegetables I didn't even want to eat could grow, was no way to spend my free time away from school, I thought. Why can't we just buy some cows, I whined. They'd eat the grass so I don't have to mow or weed, and in the fall we could have steaks. My dad grew up on a dairy farm and had learned to loathe all things bovine related. He tried to explain the enormous amount of work and expense that it took to keep cows alive and well long enough for them to get to the point you could turn them into steak. I was undeterred. Besides, he reasoned, who's going to slaughter it? You? Sure, I said. How hard could it be? Shoot the son of a bitch in the head, gut him, skin him, whack off a piece of meat, and fire up the grill. Simple. Not to mention the cool leather jacket Mom could make me from the hide, and the guts would make great fishing bait. My dad smiled knowingly at the simple mind of a child and sent me off to weed the garden. Ever since, I have loathed gardening and mowing in much the same way he hated cows. When Flannery and I still lived in the country, Lord, I miss those days. Her mom and dad would come down for a weekend about once a month, and in the spring it would be a major affair to plant flowers around the house. I always tried to avoid this senseless activity, as why go to so much trouble to grow something you can't even eat? I'd slink away and drink beer with my buddies until I thought it was safe to go home, but I'd always arrive at the exact right time to get roped into this foolishness and would spend a perfectly good weekend, sweaty, dirty, and tired. Screw this, I thought. I'm not doing this next year. And next year I'd get suckered in again. Then we moved to Columbus and lived in an apartment. No mowing, no weeding, no gardening, just lots and lots of annoying neighbors. From there we moved to Cleveland and bought a house with a postage stamp-sized yard. It took longer to gas up the mower than it took to cut the grass. This is great, I thought, until winter came and I was spending 5 hours a night shoveling snow so that Flannery could get to work the next day. In Cleveland, snow only comes in 2 increments, 4 feet and 8 feet. Finally, we moved to Canton and buy a house with a big backyard so the kids can run and play. The house is surrounded by large flower beds and has 1 tree on the whole lot, and great neighbors. My next door neighbor, Franklin, is a landscaper by trade, and his yard is always immaculate, full of exotic plants and flowers. If Disneyland was looking to create a tropical jungle in northeast Ohio, it would look like Franklin's yard. The first year we were here, I let the flower beds grow whatever the previous owners had planted. The second year I did nothing with them, and the thistle and dandelions took over. As long as I could still see out the windows, it was fine by me. The lady across the street bitched at me one afternoon that instead of relaxing and drinking beer that I should be pulling weeds. She said it with venom and disgust. I smiled, took a swig, and explained that God had put them there, and this winter He'd take them away. So who was I to question His grand scheme? She stomped off in a huff, and I returned to my Pabst. But her comment stuck with me. This year I was determined to plant some flowers that didn't require too much of my time, attention, or my money. I spent 2 weeks removing last year's crop of weeds and planting various inexpensive wildflowers. "Don't plant those," Franklin warned. "They're just going to take over the whole bed." "That's what I want, Frank. There'll be enough of them to choke out all of the weeds, and I won't have to dick with it," I said. He just shook his head. After a whole month of weeding and planting, I decided I'd go whole hog and plant a garden too. After all, flowers are pretty, but you can't eat them. I wasn't going for anything too elaborate, just some corn, carrots, peppers, and radishes. I'd only need to work up a small plot, poke some seeds in, water, and wait. But the plot I had in mind was much bigger than what I wanted to work up by hand. "I'll rent a rototiller and save myself a lot of back-busting work," I reasoned. I had used one on our garden as a kid, and it would do the work in minutes compared to my days of hand labor. "Are you going to remove the sod first?" Franklin asked when I mentioned it to him. "Nah, that thing'll thrash right through it," I said. Franklin just smiled the same way my dad did when I suggested cows. I rented one from a place down the street and mentally laid out a spot in my mind. I threw my back out wrestling this monster of modern agriculture out of the back of the Jeep. I sweated and swore as I shoved it to the backyard. I spent 20 minutes pulling the cord until it came to life. I moved it into position and engaged the tines to begin revolving and christened my new life as a gentleman farmer. It drugged me for a few feet until I had enough good sense to let go of the handle. I braced myself for another pass. It pulled my arms from their sockets with the ease of a charging Clydesdale as it managed to toss a few clods of dirt back in my face for a final insult. I swore the biggest, most potent oath I could think of. The one I try to never, ever let fly from my lips. I walked into the lodge and got a beer from the fridge to help steady my rattled nerves and soothe the pain in my back and shoulders. As I did, the dirt from my face and neck took the express route down my clothes and settled uncomfortably into my underwear. "Fuck a fucking fuck," I muttered as I cracked open the can. I guzzled my pain reliever as it occurred to me that the soil down home had been sandy, loamy river bottom at one time and could be worked up with some determined fingers. The soil in my backyard was as hard as concrete and hadn't been moved since Noah got off the ark and commented that it looked like it was going to be a nice day. I should have listened to Franklin. I gave up with an abject sigh. I shoved the rototiller to the back of the Jeep. My back made little crunching noises like crushing Rice Krispies as I heaved it in and drove the son of a bitch back to the rental place under a black cloud of failure. "Well, that didn't take you long," said the cheery guy at the rental place. "Yeah, it was just one flower bed, but it was more than I wanted to do by hand," I lied. "What do I owe you?" "32 even." I plunked down my bank card and was reminded of the phrase about a fool and his money. Doc.